Welcome back to my channel AWS DevOps Niche 11. So team, thank you so much for all your support and feedback for my videos. It really motivates me a lot to publish more and more videos. So in this video, we are going to see how to set up the WAF in AWS. So WAF is a web application firewall. So how do you block the traffic hitting your application layer by setting up the WAF? So that is what we are going to typically see in this video. So what is a WAF? WAF is a web application firewall. Using the WAF, you can control the traffic, whatever needs to hit your web application. So as you can see, WAF helps to protect your web applications from common web exploits and also the bots, which typically impact the availability, compromise, security, or they consume excessive resources. So ideally, it is one of the way how you can mitigate the DDoS attacks that is happening on your web applications, right? So DDoS means the distributed denial of service attacks. So if at all you want to control those kind of attacks and any malicious activities that is happening on your web application, you can use a WAF in front of the application endpoint, and you can allow only the traffic, whatever you want to hit the load balancer. So generally, WAF is provisioned in front of an application load balancer. So majorly in a real-time scenarios, it is all provisioned in front of the application load balancer. So behind the load balancer, you might be having some web servers running. And you can also provision a WAF in front of an Amazon CloudFront distribution. So if at all you are hosting your web application using a CloudFront distribution, which in turn leverages the edge locations, so WAF can be provisioned in front of the CloudFront distributions as well. Or it can be provisioned in front of even the Amazon API Gateway or AWS AppSec. But in most of the cases, it is all provisioned in front of an application load balancer. So it helps control access to your web application by using the IP address from where the request originated, or by requesting the query string values. Basically, in the WAF, you can configure the source IP from which you want to really allow the traffic or block the traffic. Let's say you want to allow the traffic only from a particular source IP address. So that can be typically configured on the WAF using the IP set. So we can configure two rules primarily. One is the allow rule and one is the block rule. So do you want to really allow the traffic from the source IP address, or do you want to block the traffic from the source IP address? So it can be configured using the WAF. So if you can see here, if at all we have allowed the request in the WAF, so that request will be forwarded to the application load balancer that is behind the web application firewall, right? But however, if you have blocked the IP address from where the request is coming, then WAF is going to respond with the 404 status error code, which is forbidden access. Okay, so this is how, based on our allow rules or based on our block rules, WAF is going to decide whether it has to forward the request to the load balancer or it has to block the request there itself. Okay, so this is the scenario that we are going to do in our lab also. So this is a lab exercise. Set up a WAF in front of an application load balancer to allow or block requests only from a particular source IP address. Right. So this is the main scenario here. Okay. So we will be setting up a WAF in front of an application load balancer to both allow or block the request which is coming only from a particular source IP address. Right. So how do we do that? What are all the various configurations we need to do to make it happen? So these are all the steps. But this is what typically I'm going to do. Let's say this is the end user. And we have our application here. That is the application load balancer. I will call this as a ALB. This is our application load balancer. Okay. So in front of the application load balancer, I'm going to provision a WAF, which is the Web Application Firewall. Firewall, right? So in this WAF, I'm going to put in the rules. So based on the rule, whenever the traffic is hitting from the end user to the application load balancer endpoint, it is going to go via this WAF. So when the WAF sees that the IP address of this end user, the source IP address is in the block list, it is going to reject the request. But however, if this source IP address is in the allowed list, then it will be forwarding the request to the application load balancer so that the end user will be able to access the web application via the application load balancer. Okay, but however, whenever it blocks the request, then in that case, it is going to give you a 4-bit error, 4-bit message. So this is what we are going to see. Now let me go back to my slide. So now what are all the steps that we need to do? First is we need to create a IP set. All these things we will be doing it under the WAF service, the console. First we need to create an IP set. We have to create a rule group. Then mainly we need to create a Web ACL. We call it as a Web ACL, Web Access Control List, in which we will be calling the created IP set as well as the rule group. And post this, we are going to verify if the WAF is working as expected. So these are all the 4 steps that we will do as part of the lab. Fine team, now let's jump into the lab. So I already have my application load balancer provision. I'm in my AWS console. I'm in the Oregon region, right? And this is my application load balancer. I already got it provisioned. So this load balancer is basically mapped to 2 web servers. There are 2 web servers behind this load balancer. So what I will do is I'm going to take the DNS endpoint of this load balancer and let us put it in the browser. I'm getting this default Apache page, right? Now, I also have created a path-based routing wherein if I give /web1, the load balancer endpoint /web1, the request will get routed to the web1 instance. Similarly, if I mention web2 /index.html because that is my default home page, now it is going to route it to the welcome to web2. So this is typically the load balancer, what I have set up. Now on this load balancer, I'm going to place a WAF in front of the load balancer. Okay. So what do we need to do for that? If I go back to my slide, so the first step is we need to create an IP set, right? So here, this is my WAF console. If you search for WAF, you will get this option, WAF and Shield, the services that are used to protect against DDoS attacks and malicious web traffic. Okay, so team, as I told you, first step is to create a IP set. How do we create an IP set? I click IP sets here. Then I will say create IP set. Let me give it a name. Maybe test IP set. And what is the region? In which region you want to create this IP set? So where is our load balancer running? Our load balancer is running in the Oregon region. So I want my WAF also to run in the Oregon region. So here I'm going to select the region as US West Oregon and IP address. So from which IP address you want to really allow the access to the web application or block the access? So we can try both. But the IP address, what I'm going to select is my own system's IP address, right? So how do I find that? So if I give the command, what is my IP address? I can get my IP. Okay, so this is my IP address. Just copy this. Okay, so let me configure this IP address here. So since this is only one IP, I'm going to say /32. If it is only one IP, you will mention the mask as /32. That is typically a networking concept. So yeah, once you go through that subnet mask and the CADR, the classless internet domain routing, how the mask is represented, basically you can understand that. But yeah, this being a single IP, I'm just putting a /32, right? Let's say create IP set. So now this is the IP set wherein we have given the IP address, the source IP address from where we need to either approve the request or block the request. So if I change the region to Oregon, you will see the IP set what we just created. Okay, you can see it. This is our IP set, test IP set. Now, what is the next step? Next step is creating a rule group. So let's go ahead and create a rule group. So rule group, you can see it here, right? So let me click that and create a rule group. We'll say create rule group. Let me give a name, test RG. Region name will be the same, US West Oregon. And we need to add a rule, right? So again, I will say the rule name as test rule. Okay, and let it be a regular rule. Now, what is the action I need to do? This is a very important section, right? In this rule, what is the action I'm going to do? So we have various actions that can be configured here. Whether you want the WAF to allow the request coming from that IP address, or you want to really block the request coming from that IP address, or if you want to really make a count of all the requests hitting the WAF, or you want to provide a captcha code, etc., or you want to offer a challenge token. So these are the various ways or various actions that can be configured in the rules. Okay, so in my case, I'm setting the option as block so that whatever request is coming from my IP set, which is my IP address, right? That request will be blocked by the WAF and it is not going to route it to the load balancer, application load balancer. So I'm selecting block and I'm saying add rule and it is saying an inspection option. So originates from an IP address, right? So IP address is where it is in my IP set. Okay. So it's a source IP address. So it is going to check for that source IP address. If the request is coming from that source IP address, it is going to directly block the request. So that is the configuration we are doing. Okay. So here we are mentioning the source IP, the test IP set, which is mapped to my source IP. And here we are mentioning the action to take, block, right? Now let me click add rule. Now this is our rule, test rule. You can see it is a block. The action is a block. Okay. Now I will click next. Click next. And I will click rule group. Okay, so now we have done the first two steps, team. We are done with creating the IP set. We are done with creating the rule group. Now we will create the Web ACL. So how to create a Web ACL? So I click Web ACL here and I click create Web ACL. Let me give it a name, test Web ACL. And this will be important, regional resources. So what resource in front of which you want to set up the WAF? So you have to select this regional resources and resources in which region? It is Oregon, right? Our application load balancer is in Oregon region. And here I click add AWS resources. And what is our resources? It is application load balancer, right? And here it is showing the ALB, whatever I have created. Now I will just say add. So basically, you are associating the resource in with the WAF. Now let me click next. So now it is saying add the rules. I'm going to select my own rules and rule groups. So here I will select rule groups and we already have created a rule group, right? So I can give a name for the rule. And I will select my rule group, which is test RG, right? And click add rule. That's it. So this will basically conclude the configuration of your Web ACL. Now I will say create Web ACL. It will take a couple of minutes for the Web ACL to get created. Okay, I think it is now ready. Let us just check. Yeah, you can see the rules here. This is a rule that we have configured. So it is test rule. And that rule is mapped to this particular test RG rule group name, right? So basically, when I click the rule group, it is going to show the action, whatever I have selected, right? So if I go into the test rule, you can see the action is a block, right? So can we try it now, team? Now, what is supposed to happen is, if you see this fourth point, in this case, we have blocked the request, okay? So if the request is blocked, then WAF is going to respond with a forbidden access message, right? Can we see if that happens? Now let me refresh my application load balancer. Can you see here? Forbidden, because it's blocked by the WAF through our block rule, right? So whenever I hit the application load balancer endpoint, I'm going to get this message because the WAF is blocking it. So this is how you can really block the request hitting your web application by placing a WAF in front of it, right? So through the rule configuration, by setting up whether it is a allow or a block, you can control the traffic that is hitting your web application via the WAF. Okay, I hope this concept is clear. So now we will see how the allow works. Now the action, whatever we have configured is a block. Now I'm going to change it to allow now. So let me go back to my rule groups. And here, so this is my rule, right? Where the action is blocked. Now I'm going to change the action to allow. Let me say edit here. I will send the action to allow. And then let me save the rules. Now you can see here, team, we have changed the rule action to allow. Now it has to allow the request. It has to forward the request to the load balancer, anything coming from my IP address, right? That is a configuration change we have made. So when I do a refresh now, you can see here, now I'm able to see the traffic. So if it is web2.index.html, I'm going to web2. Now I will say web1. Now WAF is forwarding the traffic because we have changed the rule. So this is where we control whether it is a allow or a block, right? Oh, it is allow, it is forwarding the traffic to the application load balancer. Okay, so I hope this concept is clear with everyone on the WAF. So how do you provision a WAF in front of a load balancer? So basically, these are all the sequence of steps we need to do. First, set up a load balancer. I'm not really done that lab here. I assume that you already have some hold of creating an application load balancer. But if at all you want a video on that, please do let me know in the comments. I will put a separate video on how to set up an application load balancer, how to set up the listener configuration, target groups, etc. So to recap for WAF, we created an IP set, we created a rule group, then we created the web access control list, and after that we were able to verify whether the WAF is working as expected. So I hope this was helpful, team. So if you have any comments or additional questions, you can feel free to put it in the comment section. And also, team, just to let you know, basically I'm offering some training courses on AWS and DevOps. So if anybody is interested, you can send an email to this email ID. So I will be sharing the information about the course. Okay. So I also wanted to add that I'm also offering 200 questions for AWS SysOps Associate Certification Exam at a very minimal price. Okay, so people whoever is really keen to take up the SysOps certification, you can reach out to me to the above email ID if you want this question answer set. I can provide you that at a very minimal price. Okay, so just wanted to highlight that. Also, team, for people who wants to take a offline training from me on AWS and DevOps, I just wanted to update you that the training mode will be online. It will be via Zoom, and the class recordings also will be available after the end of each and every class. And each of the course, whether it is AWS or DevOps, it's going to span for minimum 5 to 6 weeks of interactive course, completely focused on hands-on. Right. So there is going to be some theory part, but definitely it is all going to be followed by a thorough hands-on lab exercise. Okay. So yes, if you are interested, please feel free to email at this mentioned ID. Okay, team. So that's all I had for this video. I hope this was helpful, and I will catch you all in my next video. Thank you all so much.